December 23rd, 1943. 14:30 hours. Ortona, Italy. Captain Ernst Weber pressed his back against the cold stone wall. His breath came in short white clouds that hung in the freezing air. 4 officers dead in 3 days, all of them shot from positions that should have been empty. Yesterday morning, Major Hoffman died, single bullet through the head. The shot came from a bombed-out window across the square. Weber sent his counter-sniper team to check that building immediately. They found nothing but rubble and exposure. No cover, no concealment. A suicide position for any sniper to use. Yet Hoffman was dead. This morning, Lieutenant Kraus, shot from a rooftop with no stairs, no ladder, no access. Impossible to reach without crossing open ground in daylight where a dozen German machine guns could see you. Yet Kraus was dead too. Weber whispered to his radio man, a boy of 19 whose hands shook on his equipment. The Canadian doesn't hide. He shoots from places we would never use because we would die there. But he doesn't die. He kills us and vanishes like smoke. The radio man's voice cracked. "Sir, the men are saying it's witchcraft. They say he can read minds." Weber wanted to slap him. There's no such thing as witchcraft. But even as he said the words, he wasn't sure he believed them himself. Across the square, 340 meters away, Corporal Nathaniel Bridger had been lying on an exposed rooftop for 11 hours. No stairs to this position. He'd climbed the outside wall at 2100 hours the night before, in complete darkness using cracks in the stone and a drain pipe that barely held his weight. The position was perfect because it was suicidal. Germans would never check it. Why would anyone be stupid enough to sit on an exposed rooftop where half the German army could see you if they just looked up? Nathaniel wasn't stupid. He understood wolfpack behavior. He'd learned this tracking timber wolves through the forests north of Thornhill, Manitoba, when he was 8 years old, and his family was starving. Wolves were smart. Smarter than most men gave them credit for. They checked every obvious ambush point, dense brush where a hunter might hide, fallen logs that provided cover, creek crossings where tracks showed clearly, but wolves walked right past open hilltops. Why? Because predators don't hunt from exposed positions. A wolf's brain told it that nothing dangerous could be on that bare hill, because anything there would be visible, vulnerable, easy to avoid. Nathaniel had killed 67 wolves using that knowledge, set up on the hilltops. Set up. The places wolves never checked, because their instincts said no predator would be foolish enough to sit there in plain view. Turns out German soldiers had the same instincts as wolves. Weber stood to run to the next building. Nathaniel's Springfield rifle cracked once. The sound echoed off stone walls, flat and final. Weber dropped. Bullet through the throat. He was dead before his knees hit the cobblestones. The radioman screamed and dove for cover, but Nathaniel was already moving, sliding backward off the roof rifle cradled against his chest. By the time German soldiers started shooting at where they thought the shot came from, Nathaniel was 3 buildings away, walking calmly through a basement corridor like he was taking a morning stroll. First rule when hunting wolves. 1 shot, then you leave. Never give the pack time to find you. Thornhill, Manitoba, 1928. Population 412. The town existed because of copper. Miles of tunnels beneath the rocky ground. Men going down into darkness every day, bringing up ore that got shipped south to smelters. Nathaniel Bridger was born there on March 15, 1920. His father worked the mines. Everett Bridger, quiet man, strong back, hands permanently stained brown from copper dust that never washed out no matter how hard you scrubbed. He taught Nathaniel to shoot before the boy learned to read properly. Not for sport, for survival. Everett Bridger died in a cave-in on June 3, 1928. Tunnel collapsed on a Tuesday morning. Took them 3 days to dig out the bodies. Everett was one of 7 men who didn't come home. The mining company gave Nathaniel's mother a pension, $12 a month. She had to feed herself and 4 children on that. Nathaniel was the oldest, 8 years old. 3 younger sisters who looked at him with hungry eyes when supper was just bread and watered-down soup. So Nathaniel took his father's rifle, a Winchester .22 with a stock worn smooth from decades of use, and he went into the forest. He was 8 years old. His mother gave him 1 box of ammunition, 50 rounds. That box had to last all winter because they couldn't afford more. Miss a shot, and the family eats less that week. Simple as that. Nathaniel learned not to miss. Rabbits mostly, grouse when he could find them, occasional deer if he got lucky. But the real money was in wolves. Timber wolves killed livestock, scared away game, made life dangerous for everyone. The provincial government paid a bounty, $5 for every wolf pelt you brought in. $5 was 2 weeks of food. Nathaniel killed his first wolf when he was 10 years old. He tracked the pack for 3 days through snow so deep it came up to his waist. He was small for his age, underfed, wearing boots 2 sizes too big because they were his father's old pair, but he could move quiet. His father had taught him that. In the mine, noise meant danger. Quiet meant you heard the warnings before the rock fell. Nathaniel followed the wolf tracks, studied their patterns, where they hunted, where they slept, where they travelled. He noticed something. The wolves checked every good hiding spot. They were smart about it, cautious. They'd circle around thick brush, sniff at fallen logs, avoid narrow passages between rocks, but they walked right past the open hilltops. Nathaniel climbed one of those hills. No cover, no concealment, just him sitting in the snow in plain view. The wolves came through the valley below, 40 yards away. They never looked up. Why would they? Nothing hunts from exposed positions. Nathaniel shot the alpha male. 1 bullet. The wolf dropped. The rest of the pack scattered. Nathaniel walked down, claimed the pelt, walked home. His mother cried when he gave her the $5. His sisters ate meat that week for the first time in 2 months. By the time Nathaniel was 18, he'd killed 67 wolves. Never wasted more than 2 bullets per kill. Couldn't afford to. More importantly, he'd learned something about predator behavior, about how animals think, how they calculate risk, how their brains tell them where danger can and cannot be. He learned that the safest place to be is often the most dangerous-looking place, because that's the place nobody checks. The Canadian Army didn't know what to do with Nathaniel at first. He enlisted in August 1942. Not out of patriotism, though he felt that too. Mainly he needed the money. Army paid $21 a month, almost double what he could make at the mine. Basic training at Camp Shiloh. The instructors put all the recruits through shooting qualification. Standard test. 40 rounds at 200 yards. You needed 30 hits to pass. Nathaniel put all 40 bullets through the center of the target. Perfect score. The range officer assumed it was luck, made him do it again. Nathaniel put another 40 rounds through the same hole, then another 40. Never missed once. The officer asked him where he learned to shoot like that. Nathaniel said he hunted wolves. Had to make every shot count because bullets cost money and missing meant his family went hungry. They selected him for sniper training. British instructors, professional soldiers who'd been fighting since 1939. They taught the doctrine. Use natural cover. Concealment is survival. Never expose yourself. Always have an escape route. Nathaniel listened. Didn't argue. But privately he thought they were wrong about some of it. Cover was good if the enemy expected you to use cover. But if the enemy expected you to use cover, they'd check the covered positions first. Sometimes the best place to hide was right out in the open where nobody thought to look. He didn't say this out loud. British sergeants didn't appreciate colonials questioning doctrine. November 1943. Nathaniel deployed to Italy, assigned to 1st Canadian Infantry Division. They were pushing north, fighting through mountains and rivers and small stone towns that the Germans defended like fortresses. December 20th, the Canadians reached Ortona, small coastal town, narrow streets, stone buildings that had stood for centuries. Germans had turned every house into a bunker. Every window held a machine gun or a sniper. Every basement had been rigged with booby traps. Canadian infantry was taking 40% casualties trying to clear the streets. For every 100 men who went in, 40 didn't come out. Company commanders were running out of soldiers, running out of options, running out of time. Nathaniel's commanding officer was Captain Richard Morrison, career soldier from Halifax. Believed in doing things by the book, proper military procedure, British doctrine, overwhelming firepower. Morrison called Nathaniel into his office on the morning of December 20th. Bridger, you're a sniper. British doctrine says use covered positions, good concealment, multiple escape routes. You understand? Yes, sir, Nathaniel said. Good. Don't do anything stupid. We've already lost 2 sniper teams this week because they exposed themselves unnecessarily. Follow the doctrine and you'll come home alive. Nathaniel said yes, sir, again, but he had no intention of following doctrine. December 20th, 14:30 hours. Nathaniel studied the main square in Ortona through binoculars. Germans held the church, the post office, and 3 stone houses. Strong positions, interlocking fields of fire. Any Canadian soldier who tried to cross that square would be cut down before he made it 10 meters. A British sniper team had tried yesterday, set up in what the manual called a perfect position. 2nd floor of a building with good stone walls, window that provided a clear view of German positions, multiple rooms to move between, backstairs for escape. A German counter-sniper killed both of them in 4 hours. Why? Because it was a perfect position. Germans knew to check perfect positions. Nathaniel chose the worst position in Ortona, a bombed-out bakery, 3rd floor, entire front wall blown away by artillery, completely exposed to German positions on 3 sides. From that bakery, you'd be visible from at least 50 German windows. British Lieutenant Shaw saw where Nathaniel was setting up. He came running. "Bridger, that's suicide. You'll be visible to half the German army." "Yes, sir," Nathaniel said. "That's why they won't look." Shaw stared at him. What Nathaniel settled into position rifle across a pile of broken bricks. "Sir, if you were a German counter-sniper, where would you look for enemy snipers?" Shaw blinked. "Covered positions, concealed firing points, places with good fields of fire and escape routes," exactly, Nathaniel said. "Exactly. So if I'm sitting in the one place that has no cover, no concealment, no escape route, they won't check it. They'll think nobody could be stupid enough to use this position." Shaw opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. He looked at the exposed bakery, at Nathaniel lying in plain view, at the German positions across the square. He shook his head. "You're either brilliant or insane, probably both. Good hunting, Corporal. 15-20 hours. A German officer appeared in the church window, 280 meters away. Nathaniel could see him clearly through his scope. The officer was using binoculars, scanning the Canadian lines, looking for targets, looking for snipers in the places snipers were supposed to be. Nathaniel exhaled slowly, let his heartbeat settle. The officer was focused on a building to Nathaniel's left, a building with good cover, perfect sniper position. Nathaniel squeezed the trigger. The Springfield kicked against his shoulder. The bullet traveled 280 meters in less than half a second, hit the officer in the center of his chest. The officer dropped out of sight. Nathaniel didn't watch him fall, already scanning for the next target. 15:35 hours. Second German officer, same church, different window. Apparently hadn't heard about the first one dying, or didn't believe it could happen from the exposed bakery. Nathaniel fired. Second officer down. 1800 hours. A German sergeant tried to retrieve the first officer's body. Brave man. Stepped into the church doorway, grabbed the corpse by the collar, started dragging it to safety. Nathaniel shot him through the chest. The sergeant fell across the officer's body. Now there were 2 corpses in the doorway, and nobody else was willing to try recovering them. 3 shots, 3 kills, all from the position the British called suicide. December 20th, 1800 hours. German command post. Hauptmann Otto Richter studied the casualty report with growing confusion. 3 officers, 1 sergeant, all killed from the bakery building, the one with no front wall, completely exposed. Richter called for his best counter-sniper, Werner Schmidt, veteran who'd survived Stalingrad, man who'd killed 17 Russian snipers on the Eastern Front. Schmidt arrived, studied the bakery through binoculars. Hauptmann, nobody could survive in that position. "We have machine guns covering it from 9 different windows. If someone's there, he's dead." Richter tapped the casualty list. "Then how are our officers dying?" Schmidt had no answer. December 21st, 0830 hours. Schmidt tried anyway. Set up in a textbook-perfect position. Second floor of a house with thick stone walls. Small window with excellent view of Canadian lines. Multiple rooms to move between if he needed to relocate. Nathaniel saw him almost immediately. The position was too perfect. Nathaniel understood wolf behavior. When you're hunting wolves, you learn to recognize patterns. Wolves think. They make decisions. They try to outsmart you. German snipers were the same. They thought like predators. They chose positions that predators would choose, which meant Nathaniel could predict where they'd be. He waited 90 minutes, didn't move, breathing slow and steady. Schmidt was good, stayed hidden, didn't expose himself. But eventually, Schmidt had to shift position. Muscles cramp when you stay still too long. You need to move or you lose effectiveness. Schmidt moved. Just his shoulder. 2 seconds of exposure. Nathaniel fired. Schmidt died looking for a Canadian sniper in all the wrong places. Died without ever realizing the Canadian was sitting in the most exposed position, in Ortona. By the end of December 21st, Nathaniel had killed 9 more Germans. All from exposed positions that Germans never thought to check. 12 kills in 2 days. 0 Canadian casualties in his sector. The Germans were starting to understand they were facing something they'd never encountered before. A predator who thought differently, who broke all the rules, who hunted from positions that should be suicide, but somehow weren't. They called him Der Wolfjäger, the wolf hunter. They didn't know his name. Didn't know he was a farm boy from a mining town of 412 people. Didn't know he'd learned his tactics tracking animals through frozen forests. They just knew that men were dying, officers were dying, and nobody could find the Canadian who was killing them. December 22nd, 0800 hours. Lieutenant General David Stone arrived at the Canadian command post. He'd been reading the casualty reports with great interest. 12 German kills in 2 days. 0 friendly losses in that sector. Numbers like that got attention. Captain Morrison was furious. Sir Bridger is violating every principle of sniper doctrine. He's sitting in exposed positions. The instant the Germans figure out where he is, they'll bring artillery down and paste him on the walls. How many kills, Captain 12, in 2 days, sir? But that doesn't change the fact that he's being reckless. He's gambling with his life, and it's only a matter of time before... What are our casualties in his sector? Morrison's jaw clenched. 0, sir. Stone nodded. I've read the German radio intercepts. Their snipers are dying trying to find him. Their officers are refusing to show themselves in daylight. Their soldiers are talking about witchcraft. One man with a rifle is creating more fear in the German ranks than an entire artillery battalion. Sir, this is not proper procedure. This is not how snipers are supposed to. This is effective, Captain, which is all that matters in war. Stone found Nathaniel in the ruins of what used to be a wine shop, cleaning his rifle with the same methodical care he'd learned as a boy when ammunition was precious and every shot had to count. Bridger, you're not following any doctrine I've ever read. Where did you learn this hunting wolves, sir? In Manitoba. Stone smiled. Wolves. The Germans are being outfought by a man who learned tactics from wolves. He shook his head, but there was respect in his eyes. I'm authorizing a 3-man sniper team, Corporal. You choose your own men, train them your way, use them how you see fit. Nathaniel chose carefully. Private Lyle Brennan arrived first. 22 years old, Irish immigrant from Cork County who'd come to Canada in 1938 looking for work and found it in the logging camps. Red hair, freckles across his nose, sharp eyes that could calculate windage and distance faster than anyone Nathaniel had ever met. Lyle was Nathaniel's spotter, the man who read the wind, who measured the range, who watched for threats while Nathaniel was focused down the scope. Corporal Finn Calloway came next. 25, Scottish immigrant from Glasgow, broad shoulders, hands scarred from factory work, best shot in 2nd Battalion after Nathaniel himself. Finn had a reputation, aggressive, took risks. At the Moro River crossing 3 weeks ago, he'd charged a German machine gun nest alone, killed the crew with grenades and his rifle, saved 6 men who were pinned down, got a medal for it. But Nathaniel saw the problem. Finn was brave. Brave was good. But brave got you killed if you didn't combine it with smart. The third man was Lieutenant Jasper Whitmore, 28, from Boston, banker's son before the war, Harvard graduate, commissioned officer who felt pressure every day to prove he wasn't just some rich kid playing soldier. Jasper was smart, tactical mind, could read terrain, understood German defensive patterns, but he wanted glory, wanted to prove himself, wanted results fast. Dangerous combination. Nathaniel sat all 3 men down in the basement of a half-collapsed house. You volunteered for sniper duty. Why Finn spoke first? His Scottish brogue was thick even after 3 years in Canada. I'm tired of charging at machine guns and hoping I don't die. Rather be the one they're scared of. Jasper was quieter. I need to show I can do this, that I'm not just here because my father knows generals. Nathaniel studied them both. I'm going to teach you something the British don't teach. Something I learned hunting wolves in Manitoba. You know what the most important skill in hunting is? Good aim, Finn said. Nathaniel shook his head. Patience. Wolves don't rush. Wolves wait, sometimes for days. They watch. They learn patterns. Then they strike when the moment is perfect. Jasper frowned. But we don't have days. We have orders, objectives, timelines. Nathaniel looked at him. You want to survive this war? Yes. Then you learn to wait. You learn that wanting something too much gets you killed. You take the shot when it's right, not when you want to, when it's right. Finn cracked his knuckles. So we just sit around doing nothing? No, Nathaniel said. You sit around doing everything. Watching, learning, understanding. Then when the perfect moment comes, you act. One shot, then you disappear. That's how wolves hunt. That's how we hunt. Over the next 12 hours, Nathaniel trained them in the wolf doctrine, showed them how to choose positions the enemy's brain would ignore, how to predict German movement patterns, how to wait without moving for hours at a time. Finn struggled with the waiting. His legs cramped. He wanted to shift position, wanted to stretch. Nathaniel made him stay still. In Manitoba, I once waited 43 hours for a wolf pack to come through a valley. Didn't move, didn't sleep, just waited. When they came, I killed the alpha with one shot. The pack avoided that valley for 2 years after. You need to learn that kind of patience. Jasper struggled with different problems. He kept trying to calculate the perfect shot, the perfect angle, the perfect range, treating it like a mathematics problem. Nathaniel told him to stop thinking. Thinking makes you slow. You need to feel it, like breathing. You see the target, you know the range, your body knows what to do. Let it. Lyle learned fastest, maybe because he'd been with Nathaniel longest, maybe because he had his own reasons for being here. On the second day of training, Lyle told Nathaniel about his younger brother, Michael Brennan, 19 years old. Killed at Kasserine Pass back in July. I joined the sniper program for one reason, Lyle said quietly. I want them to feel what we felt, helpless, not knowing where death is coming from, unable to fight back. Nathaniel understood revenge, but he also knew it was dangerous. Revenge makes you impatient. Impatience gets you killed. Your brother's death matters. Honor it by staying alive, by being better than the man who killed him. Lyle nodded. But Nathaniel saw the anger still there, buried, controlled, but there. December 22nd, 15:45 hours. First combat test of the new team. A German platoon tried crossing the main square using smoke grenades. Smart tactic. Fill the square with smoke. Cross under cover. Canadian machine guns couldn't see to shoot. Nathaniel watched the smoke spread. White clouds billowing across cobblestones. He could hear German voices, commands being shouted, boots on stone. Finn raised his rifle. I can hear them. Let me fire into the smoke. Nathaniel put a hand on his shoulder. Wait. Smoke clears. Always does. Wind or time. Wait for it. 30 seconds passed. The smoke began thinning at the edges. Nathaniel saw shapes moving. 3 Germans running hard for the cover of a doorway. Now, Nathaniel said. He fired. The lead German dropped. Finn fired half a second later. Second German fell. Lyle called the range for the third target. Jasper tracked him through the scope. The third German made it to the doorway, ducked inside. Jasper's finger tightened on the trigger. Don't shoot the door, Nathaniel said. Why not, Jasper asked. Because he's going to look out in about 20 seconds. Curiosity. Fear. Need to know if his friends are dead. Can't help himself. How do you know human nature? Same as wolves. They hear danger. Hide. Then can't resist checking. 22 seconds later, the German's head appeared at the doorframe. Just for a moment, checking on his fallen comrades. Jasper shot him through the face. Nathaniel nodded. Good. You're learning. They spent the rest of the day in their positions, the exposed locations that made British doctrine scream in protest. But the Germans still didn't figure it out, still didn't check the one place they should have checked. By the time the sun set on December 22nd, Nathaniel's team had 12 confirmed kills, all from positions that shouldn't exist. The German command was in chaos. Their counter-sniper teams were dying. Their officers were refusing to show themselves. Their soldiers were whispering about ghosts and witchcraft, and a Canadian who could read minds. But Nathaniel knew the truth. It wasn't magic. It wasn't witchcraft. It was just understanding how predators think, and knowing that sometimes the most dangerous place is the safest place, because that's the place nobody looks. The Germans were learning that lesson the hard way. 1 bullet at a time. December 23rd, 06:12 hours. Dawn broke over Ortona with the kind of cold that made your bones ache. Nathaniel lay prone on a rooftop with no cover, no concealment. Nothing between him and the German positions except 480 meters of empty air. The position was insane. He was skylined against the sunrise, silhouetted, visible from every direction. Lyle Brennan lay beside him, binoculars pressed to his face. His breath came in tight whispers. Sarge, we're completely exposed here. Dawn backlight. Anyone looking our way will see us clear as day. I know, Nathaniel said. That's why it'll work. In the church steeple across the square, a German observer was setting up his position. If that observer got established, he'd direct artillery fire onto Canadian positions, could kill 100 men with accurate coordinates. The steeple opening was maybe 30 centimeters wide. The observer was barely visible inside. Jasper whispered from Nathaniel's left. I can take the shot. Nathaniel studied the target through his scope. Too far for you. Too much risk. Dawn light behind us means they'll see muzzle flash. I'll do it. He settled his breathing. Calculated wind. Distance. The slight angle of morning light refracting through cold air. The observer appeared in the window. Nathaniel fired. The Springfield's crack echoed off stone walls. The observer fell backward into the darkness of the steeple. Gone. German soldiers in the buildings below saw the muzzle flash. Nathaniel knew they did. He was skylined against dawn, completely visible. But nobody shot back. Their brains couldn't process it. Nobody stands on an open rooftop at sunrise. Nobody exposes themselves like that. Must be a reflection. Must be a shadow. Can't be a person, because a person there would already be dead. Nathaniel stood up, walked to the edge of the roof, looked down at the square. Finn hissed. "What are you doing?" "Testing something," Nathaniel said. He stood there for 5 full minutes, completely visible. 50 German soldiers could have shot him. Maybe 100. Nobody fired. Finally, Nathaniel stepped back. "Okay, we can leave now." As they climbed down, Jasper's voice was tight. "That was the craziest thing I've ever seen." "That was understanding blind spots," Nathaniel said. "Every predator has them. You just need to know where to look." By 1800 hours on December 23rd, Nathaniel's team had 15 kills. The running total was 39 Germans dead in 4 days. The German radio traffic was frantic. Encrypted messages that Canadian intelligence intercepted and decoded. Officers refusing to leave bunkers. Platoon leaders won't approach windows. Soldiers claiming the Canadian can see through walls. Mass desertion threat in second company. Captain Morrison read the intercepts with a mixture of disbelief and grudging respect. One man was destroying German morale across an entire sector. But Morrison still didn't like it. Still thought Nathaniel was gambling with lives. Still believed doctrine existed for a reason. Lieutenant General Stone thought differently. He visited Nathaniel's position on the afternoon of the 23rd. Found him in the ruins of what used to be an apartment building. 3rd floor. No front wall. Completely exposed. Stone stood in the rubble and shook his head. "Bridger, the Germans are calling you Der Wolfjäger, the wolf hunter. They think you're some kind of supernatural force." "Just hunting, sir. Same as always." Stone smiled. "Keep hunting, Corporal. You're doing more damage to German combat effectiveness than anything else we've tried." December 24th. 14:15 hours. Christmas Eve. Finn Calloway made a mistake. His nature was aggressive. Brave. The kind of soldier who charged machine gun nests alone and somehow survived. But bravery without patience is just another word for reckless. Finn took a forward position without clearing it with Nathaniel first. Wanted to get closer to the German lines. Wanted a better angle. He made it 50 meters before a German MG-42 opened up. 1,200 rounds per minute. The gun could cut a man in half. Finn dove into a crater. Bullets chewed the earth around him. Every time he tried to move, the gun fired again. Precise, controlled, professional. Finn's voice came over the radio. "Bridger, I'm pinned. I'm dead if I stay here." Nathaniel grabbed his rifle. Lyle was already calculating distance. 600 meters through open ground, Lyle said. "You'll be spotted." Nathaniel was already moving. Wolves don't abandon pack. The crawl took 40 minutes, 600 meters using every depression in the ground, every shadow, every piece of rubble, moving with the patience he'd learned tracking wolves through Manitoba snow. He reached a low hillock overlooking the German machine gun position. Another exposed location. The Germans could see him if they looked, but they were focused on Finn, on killing the man in the crater. Tunnel vision. Wolfpack behavior. When wolves chase prey, they stop checking for other threats. Nathaniel lined up the shot. The gunner. The loader. The third man reaching for spare ammunition. He fired 3 times in 8 seconds. 3 Germans dead before they knew what hit them. Finn ran, made it back to Canadian lines with bullets kicking up dust at his heels. Later, when his breathing settled, Finn looked at Nathaniel. "You saved my life." "Pack," Nathaniel said. "Wolves protect pack. I won't forget that." "You will," Nathaniel said. "In the moment when you're scared or angry or want to prove something, you'll forget. Everyone does. That's why I have to keep teaching you." December 24th, 0340 hours. Lyle Brennan was on solo patrol, mapping German positions for the morning assault. He stepped on something in the darkness and heard a click. Landmine. Didn't explode. Dirt in the mechanism maybe, or a delay fuse. But Lyle froze. Couldn't move. Mine under his boot. A German patrol heard the sound. 5 soldiers, 20 meters away, coming with flashlights. Lyle whispered into his radio. "Can't move. Mine under my foot. Germans coming. I'm dead." Nathaniel was moving before Lyle finished the sentence. Reached a rooftop position, 80 meters away. Flat roof, completely exposed against the stars. The Germans were looking down, tracking the sound, searching the ground with their lights. Predator instinct. Track prey on the ground. Don't look up. Nathaniel killed all 5 in 12 seconds. 5 shots, 5 bodies. Then he crawled to Lyle, examined the mine by feel in the darkness. His hands knew the shape. German S-mine. Pressure release trigger. Step off, and it explodes. When I say now, you jump backward as hard as you can. Mine will explode, but you'll be clear. Lyle's voice shook. How do you know I don't? Wolves take risks for pack members. Ready? Numb. Now. Lyle jumped. The mine exploded. Shrapnel screamed through the space where he'd been standing, missed him by inches. They crawled back to Canadian lines in silence. An hour later, Lyle finally spoke. You almost died for me, Pack Nathaniel said. That's all. But Lyle understood something deeper. Nathaniel didn't just teach wolf tactics, he lived them. The pack mattered more than the individual. Survival meant protecting each other. By the end of December 24th, the count was 50 dead Germans. Nathaniel's sector had become a killing ground, a place where German officers refused to give orders because giving orders meant exposing yourself to Der Wolfjäger, the man who hunted from positions that couldn't exist, who killed from places that should be suicide, who seemed to know what Germans would do before they did it. Witchcraft, the soldiers whispered. Black magic. How else could you explain it? But there was no magic, just a man who understood that predators have patterns, and patterns can be predicted. December 25th, 14:30 hours, Christmas Day. Jasper Whitmore saw an opportunity. A German officer in a window, 420 meters. The shot was makeable. Jasper had made harder shots in training. The position to shoot from was a stone archway. Good cover. Excellent concealment. Textbook perfect. Everything British doctrine said a sniper position should be. Nathaniel saw what Jasper was planning. No, don't use that position. Jasper turned. Why not Germans check good positions? Use a worse position. This is perfect cover. British doctrine says this is exactly where a sniper should be. British snipers are dead, Nathaniel said. Jasper's jaw tightened. I need to prove I can do this, that I'm not just following you around like some trained dog. I can make my own decisions. Nathaniel grabbed his arm. Jasper, listen to me. That archway is too perfect. It's the first place German counter-snipers will watch. Use a worse position. Jasper pulled away. I need to show I'm not just a rich kid playing soldier, that I earned this. He moved to the archway, set up his rifle. The position felt right, felt safe, felt like everything he'd been taught. Jasper fired, hit the German officer center mass. The officer fell. Then a shot from across the square. The German counter-sniper had been waiting, positioned exactly where he knew a Canadian would set up, because the archway was perfect, and perfect positions are predictable. 2 shots. First caught Jasper in the shoulder, spun him. Second hit his chest, punctured lung. Nathaniel and Finn dragged him back under fire. Bullets chipping stone around them, got him to cover behind a collapsed wall. Nathaniel applied pressure to the wounds, but he knew. Had seen enough men die. Knew the sound of a punctured lung, the wet rattle, the colour of arterial blood soaking through field dressings. Jasper was coughing, each breath a struggle, eyes already starting to glaze. He looked up at Nathaniel, tried to smile through bloody teeth. I wanted to prove I wasn't just a banker's kid. Wanted to show I could do it right. You did, Nathaniel said. You're a soldier. Good soldier. Now stop talking. Save your strength. But Jasper knew. Should have hunted wolves. Should have learned patience. Tell my father I tried. He died at 15:34 hours. Age 28. 4 months in combat. Killed because he used doctrine instead of instinct. Nathaniel sat with the body for 10 minutes. Didn't speak. Didn't move. Just sat. Finn and Lyle stood nearby. The only sound was wind moving through broken buildings. Finally, Nathaniel pulled out his notebook, the small leather journal he kept hidden, where he recorded every kill. Every decision. He wrote in careful block letters. December 25, 1943. Jasper Whitmore died today. Used good position because wanted to prove he could do things right way. Doctrine killed him sure as bullet did. I trained him. Should have seen he wasn't ready. Should have known he cared too much about proving himself. This one's on me. He closed the notebook, looked at Finn and Lyle. Tomorrow we finish this. No more losses, no more mistakes. We hunt until the Germans break. How do you know they'll break? Finn asked. Because that's what wolves do, Nathaniel said. When the pack loses too many, when the hunt becomes too dangerous, when fear outweighs hunger, they leave. They find easier prey. Germans are the same. We just need to push them past their breaking point. Christmas Day, 1800 hours. Nathaniel was consumed by something cold and methodical. Jasper's death had burned away hesitation, burned away caution. What remained was pure purpose. He took the most dangerous positions he'd used yet. A water tower with no cover. A blown-out roof with no walls, places that made Finn and Lyle scream protests. But Nathaniel was beyond listening. He was hunting. Pure wolf. No thought. Just instinct and precision and the accumulated knowledge of 10 years tracking predators through frozen forests. The Germans never saw him, never found him. Their brains couldn't accept that someone would be where he was. So they kept dying. 16-15 hours. A German officer trying to rally his men. 300 meters. One shot. Dead. 17-30 hours. A machine gunner setting up a new position. 400 meters. One shot. Dead. 18-45 hours. A sniper trying to find Nathaniel. 350 meters. One shot. Dead. 19-20 hours. A radio operator calling for artillery support. 290 meters. One shot. Dead. 20-15 hours. A lieutenant with a map. 330 meters. One shot. Dead. 21-40 hours. A sergeant moving supplies. 260 meters. One shot. Dead. 22-55 hours. The last kill of Christmas Day. A German soldier who made the mistake of looking out a window. 300 meters. One shot. Dead. 13 kills on Christmas Day, bringing the total to 63. But Nathaniel wasn't counting anymore, wasn't thinking about numbers, was only thinking about Jasper. About doctrine that killed as surely as bullets. About young men who died because they were taught rules instead of understanding. December 26th, 0600 hours. The dawn came grey and cold. Nathaniel hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, just hunted through the night like wolves hunt. Relentless, patient, inevitable. 0615, first kill of the day. German soldier at a window, 280 meters. Dead. 0740, second kill. Officer with binoculars. 320 meters. Dead. 0825, third kill. Machine gunner, 400 meters. Dead. 0940, fourth kill. Sniper, 300 meters. Dead. 1020, fifth kill. Radio operator, 350 meters. Dead. 1105, sixth kill. Lieutenant, 290 meters. Dead. 1135, seventh kill. Sergeant, 310 meters. Dead. 1150, eighth kill. Soldier moving ammunition, 270 meters. Dead. 1210, ninth kill. Officer at doorway, 340 meters. Dead. 1225, 10th kill. The last German Nathaniel would kill in Ortona. Soldier trying to retrieve a wounded comrade. 300 meters. Dead. 73 Germans killed in 6 days. December 20th through December 26th, 1943. One Canadian killed. Lieutenant Jasper Whitmore, age 28, died because he followed the rules. December 26th. 0900 hours. Private Klaus Fischer walked across no man's land with his hands raised. White flag tied to a rifle. 19 years old. Shaking so hard he could barely hold the weapon. Canadian soldiers brought him to the intelligence officer. Lieutenant Shaw sat across from the terrified German in a basement room that smelled of cordite and fear. Why did you surrender? Fischer's English was broken but understandable. We cannot fight him anymore. Der Wolfjäger, the wolf hunter. Shaw leaned forward. Tell me about him. Fischer's hands trembled on the table. He shoots from places that should be empty. Kills our officers from positions we check and find nothing. Yesterday, Hauptmann Weber said the Canadian doesn't hide. He uses bad positions. Exposed positions. Places we would never use because we would die there. Shaw made notes. What do your men think? Some say ghost. Some say witch. Some say demon. Fischer's voice dropped to a whisper. I think he just understands how we think better than we understand ourselves. Explain. He knows we check good positions, so he uses bad positions. He knows we expect snipers to hide, so he sits in plain sight. He knows how we think, predicts what we will do. It is like he reads minds. But it is not magic. It is worse. He simply understands us. How many men have you lost? 73 in 6 days? Fischer's voice broke. Most of them officers. Anyone who gives orders. Anyone who leads. All dead. Our company commander will not leave his bunker. Our platoon leaders will not look outside. We are paralyzed. At 1400 hours, German command ordered a retreat from Ortona. They called it a tactical withdrawal, repositioning for stronger defensive lines to the north. But the German soldiers knew the truth. They were running from der Wolfjäger, from the man who hunted like a wolf, who thought like a wolf, who killed from positions that shouldn't exist. Nathaniel watched them go through his rifle scope, long columns of Germans pulling back, evacuating their positions, leaving Ortona to the Canadians. Finn sat beside him. We won. Nathaniel lowered his rifle. We survived. That's different than winning. He thought about Jasper Whitmore, about 73 Germans who wanted to go home as much as he did, about wolf tactics applied to human warfare. Winning implied something good had happened. Nathaniel didn't feel good. He felt tired, felt the weight of every decision, every shot, every moment of patience that led to someone's death. But he'd done his job, protected his pack, applied what he'd learned in the forests of Manitoba to the streets of an Italian town. The wolves had taught him well, maybe too well. December 27th, 0800 hours. The main square was empty, Germans gone. Streets quiet except for the crunch of boots on broken stone and the distant rumble of artillery somewhere to the north. Lieutenant Shaw found Nathaniel in the ruins of the wine shop, cleaning his rifle with the same methodical care he'd shown since the first day. 73 confirmed kills, Bridger. 6 days. You just rewrote the manual on sniper operations. Nathaniel didn't look up from his cleaning. Just hunted wolves, sir. Shaw sat on a chunk of rubble. The generals are talking about your methods. Want to study what you did. Train other snipers. Turn this into doctrine. Can't teach it, Nathaniel said. Takes 10 years tracking wolves to understand how predators think. Can't put that in a manual. They're going to try anyway. Nathaniel finally looked at him. Then they'll get men killed. Jasper Whitmore followed every rule in the manual. Died anyway. The rules made him predictable. Predictable gets you killed. Shaw was quiet for a long moment. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about Whitmore. He was a good officer. He was a good man, Nathaniel said. Being an officer had nothing to do with it. Canadian intelligence was already writing reports, documenting Nathaniel's techniques, analysing his kills, trying to understand what he'd done so they could replicate it. But Nathaniel knew they'd miss the point. They'd focus on the positions, the exposed locations, the violation of doctrine. They'd try to turn it into new doctrine, new rules. And rules were exactly what made men predictable, exactly what got them killed. You couldn't teach someone in a classroom what Nathaniel had learned in 10 years of winter forests. Couldn't explain in a manual the patience required to wait 43 hours without moving. Couldn't replicate the understanding that came from watching wolves make decisions based on instinct and fear and the eternal calculus of risk versus reward. The army would try. They'd create training programs, write field manuals, teach soldiers to use exposed positions, and those soldiers would die because they'd be following rules, and the enemy would learn the rules, and predictable gets you killed. Nathaniel cleaned his rifle and said nothing. February 12th, 1944. Canadian Headquarters. Medal Ceremony. Lieutenant General Stone stood before assembled officers. Nathaniel stood at attention in a clean uniform that felt wrong. Too tight, too formal. He was used to being covered in dust and cordite residue. Stone read from the citation. For extraordinary initiative and courage under fire. For development of innovative tactics resulting in decisive operational success with minimal friendly casualties. For actions above and beyond the call of duty, the military medal is hereby awarded to Corporal Nathaniel Bridger. Stone pinned the medal to Nathaniel's chest, shook his hand. Camera flashed. Someone would put this photo in newspapers back in Canada. Nathaniel stood there, 23 years old, 10 months of combat. 73 men dead by his hand, and a piece of bronze hanging on his uniform. He didn't smile. Couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw faces through his rifle scope. German faces. Young faces, men who probably had families, who probably didn't want to be in Italy any more than Nathaniel wanted to be there. The ceremony ended. Officers congratulated him, shook his hand, told him he was a credit to Canada. Nathaniel just wanted to go home. After the others left, Stone spoke quietly. You did what needed to be done, Bridger. Did I, sir? Or did I just kill 73 men who wanted to go home as much as I do? Stone's expression was somber. That's the burden of being good at war. The better you are, the heavier it weighs. Nathaniel said nothing, but he felt the weight, felt it in every breath, every heartbeat, every moment of silence. It would be a weight he'd carry for the rest of his life. The war continued. Nathaniel continued, hunting, surviving, protecting his pack. But something had changed in Ortona. Something had broken when Jasper died, when the count reached 73, when the Germans started calling him Der Wolfjäger and whispering about witchcraft. Nathaniel had learned to hunt wolves when he was 8 years old, had learned that the safest place is where predators don't look, had applied that lesson to war with devastating effectiveness. But he'd also learned something else in Ortona, something darker, that when you hunt men the same way you hunt wolves, when you reduce human beings to patterns and behaviors and predictable responses, when you become so good at killing that the enemy thinks you're supernatural, you lose something essential. You lose the ability to see them as anything other than targets. And that loss, Nathaniel was beginning to understand, was a price that no amount of tactical success could justify. The wolves had taught him how to survive, but they hadn't taught him how to live with what survival required. That lesson would take another 47 years to learn. November 8th, 1945. The train pulled into Thornhill Station at 1400 hours. Nathaniel stepped onto the wooden platform, duffel bag in hand, 25 years old, felt 50. His mother was waiting. Constance Bridger had aged, hair grey, face lined, but her eyes were the same. The same eyes that had watched him leave 3 years ago, the same eyes that had cried when he brought home $5 from his first wolf. She held him without speaking. Her hands trembled against his back, and Nathaniel understood. Some things didn't need words. His 3 sisters stood behind. Abigail with a baby, Ruth, newly married, Naomi, 17, almost a woman now. They walked him home, asked questions he couldn't answer, talked about neighbours and weather and anything except war. That night at dinner, Naomi asked, "Did you do anything important?" Nathaniel looked at his plate. "I did my job." His mother's hand covered Naomi's. More potatoes. And that was the end of it. February 12th, 1944. The medal ceremony. Lieutenant General Stone pinned bronze to Nathaniel's chest, read words about extraordinary initiative and innovative tactics. Cameras flashed. Officers congratulated. Nathaniel stood at attention, seeing faces, German faces, young faces, 73 of them. After Stone spoke quietly. "You did what needed to be done, Bridger." Isa Stone's expression was somber. "That's the burden of being good at war, son. The better you are at it, the heavier it weighs." The words would prove truer than Stone could know. Nathaniel returned to Thornhill. Got a job at the copper mine, same mine that killed his father. Same darkness, same dust. But he liked it. Liked problems with simple answers. Where to drill, how much explosive, whether the timber would hold. Not like war, where every answer created new questions. June 1946. Eloise Hargrove worked at the general store. Auburn hair, quiet laugh. Didn't ask about the war. They married 3 weeks after meeting. Small ceremony. His family. Her parents from Winnipeg. Simple. Clean. She found the medal while unpacking. "You never mentioned this." Nathaniel took it. "Doesn't bring back the men I killed. Doesn't bring back Jasper." "Who's Jasper?" "A good man who died because he followed the rules. He put the medal in a tobacco tin, hid it behind paint cans in the basement." That night she asked, "Do you want to talk about it?" "No." "Okay." She learned to recognize the signs. The nights he woke gasping. The days his eyes went distant. On those nights she just held him, said nothing. Just held him until the shaking stopped. The years accumulated. Children, work, life. Everett born in 1948. Named for Nathaniel's father. Margaret in 1951. Claire in 1955. Nathaniel taught them to hunt, showed them the forests, the patience, the respect. Everett at 9 asked, "Dad, did you hunt in the war?" Different kind of hunting, not the good kind. That was all he ever said. He taught them to shoot, made them practice, made them understand that every shot mattered. But he never told them about Ortona, about 73 men, about wolf tactics applied to human warfare. Some lessons weren't meant to be passed down. 1983. Retirement. 37 years in the mine. 37 years underground. Outlived his father by 35 years. The veterans group asked him to speak at the high school. "There's nothing inspiring about killing people," Nathaniel said. "I'd rather not." They understood. He spent his retirement hunting. Same forests where he'd tracked wolves as a boy. Still used exposed positions, still waited for the perfect shot. It worked as well on deer as it had on wolves, as it had on Germans. But now, when he took the shot, he felt something different. Not satisfaction, just weary completion. One more thing done. 1987, December. The phone rang at 1900 hours. Nathaniel answered. "Mr. Bridger, this is Dr. Richard Coleman. I'm a military historian researching the Italian campaign. I found German documents that reference Der Wolfjäger, the wolf hunter. I believe that was you, sir." Nathaniel's hand tightened on the receiver. "Your techniques at Ortona were remarkable," Coleman continued. "Changed modern sniper doctrine. I'd like to interview you for my book. Your story deserves to be 'I killed 73 men in 6 days,'" Nathaniel said. "That's the story. That's all the story there is." Sir, from a tactical standpoint, there is no tactical standpoint. There's just 73 men who didn't come home. 73 families who lost sons and fathers and brothers. You want to write about that? Coleman's voice was careful. I want to understand what you did, how you thought. The innovation. Innovation. Nathaniel laughed. Bitter. Dry. You want to know the innovation I learned to hunt wolves when I was 8 years old because my family was starving. Learned that predators don't look in certain places. Applied that to human beings. Killed them efficiently. That's the innovation, Dr. Coleman. Treating men like animals. Silence on the line. I don't want to be in your book, Nathaniel said. I don't want my methods taught to other soldiers. I don't want any of it. Leave me alone. He hung up. Eloise stood in the kitchen doorway. Who was that? Someone who thinks what I did was important. What do you think? Nathaniel looked at his hands, still stained brown from copper dust after all these years. I think I was very good at something terrible, and being good at it doesn't make it right. Eloise crossed to him, put her arms around him. You did what you had to do to survive, to protect your men. 30 Canadians survived because of me, Nathaniel said. 73 Germans died. I've spent 44 years trying to figure out if that's a good trade, and I still don't know. They stood in the kitchen, 67 years old and 63, married 41 years. And still some wounds didn't heal. Late 1989. Winter. Nathaniel and Eloise sat at the kitchen table. House quiet. Children grown and gone. Eloise poured tea. Steam rose in the lamplight. Do you ever think about the war every day? Does it get easier? No. You just get used to carrying it. What do you think about the ones I killed? Jasper. Whether any of it mattered. Eloise took his hand. I'm proud of you. For the killing. For the carrying. For choosing to live with it instead of running from it. Nathaniel squeezed her hand. Didn't speak. What could he say? That the weight never got lighter. That 46 years hadn't given him any answers. That he still saw faces through his scope every night. She knew all of it, anyway. June 13th, 1991. Evening. Nathaniel sat on the porch, watching the forest. The same trees he'd known his entire life. Eloise brought him coffee. Sat beside him. You going fishing tomorrow? Thinking about it. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I want you to know something. Nathaniel looked at her. Whatever you're carrying, whatever questions you have, you don't have to carry them alone. You've spent 46 years trying to figure out if what you did was worth it. Maybe it's time to accept that some questions don't have answers. Maybe the question isn't whether it was worth it. Maybe it's whether you did the best you could with what you knew. Did I? Eloise smiled. Sad but real. You saved 30 men. You came home. You built a life. You raised children. You've been kind and gentle and patient with everyone except yourself. So yes, I think you did the best you could. Nathaniel looked back at the forest. I still see their faces. I know. Every night. I know. They sat as the sun set. Two people who'd spent a lifetime together, who knew each other's silences as well as their words. Thank you, Nathaniel said finally. For what? For not needing me to be anything except what I am. Eloise rested her head on his shoulder. That's what love is. June 14th, 1991. Morning. Nathaniel drove to the lake at 0600 hours. Same lake where his father had taught him to fish. Same lake he'd known his entire life. Cold morning. Ice still forming at the edges, even in June. He set up his rod, sat on the bank, watched the line, not really expecting to catch anything, just being there, just being quiet. The pain came at 0937, sharp, sudden, like someone drove a spike through his chest. He set down the rod carefully, leaned back against a tree. Heart attack. He recognized it immediately. Strange. After surviving Ortona, after 73 kills, after 46 years of carrying the weight, to die here, in peace, beside a lake. Maybe that was fitting. He looked at the water, the forest, the sky turning grey with approaching weather, thought about his father who died in the mine, about Eloise waiting at home, about his children and grandchildren, about 73 Germans whose faces he still remembered, about Jasper Whitmore who died because he followed the rules, about wolves on hilltops, about snipers in exposed positions, about the question he'd carried for 46 years. Was it worth it? And suddenly sitting there with his heart failing and the forest around him and the weight finally lifting, Nathaniel realized something. The question itself was the answer. The fact that he'd asked it every day for 46 years. The fact that he'd never let himself forget those 73 faces. The fact that he'd carried the weight instead of pretending it didn't exist. That was what separated him from the men who enjoyed killing, from the men who saw it as sport, from the men who forgot. He'd never forgotten, never would forget. And that somehow mattered. It didn't make it right, didn't bring back the dead, didn't erase what he'd done. But it meant he'd stayed human. Even when being human hurt, the pain spread. Breathing became difficult. Nathaniel closed his eyes. The wind moved through the pines. Same wind that had moved through these forests when he was 8 and learning to hunt. Full circle. You can rest now, he thought. You carried it far enough. And Nathaniel Bridger let go. The sheriff found him at 1500 hours, called Eloise. She drove to the lake, saw him against the tree, peaceful. She sat beside him, took his hand still warm. You can stop carrying it now, she whispered. You did enough. You were enough. The wind answered. Nothing else. They buried him 3 days later. Military headstone. Simple. Nathaniel Bridger, Corporal Canadian Army, 1920 to 1991. Military medal. No mention of der Wolfjäger. No mention of 73. No mention of 6 days in Ortona. Just a name, dates, rank, the way he would have wanted. 80 people attended, neighbours, veterans, family. The pastor spoke about a good man, hard worker, loving father, patient teacher, all true, but incomplete. After Finn Calloway approached Eloise, 72 years old now, came all the way from Scotland. He saved my life, Finn said. Ortona, Christmas Eve. I was pinned down. He crawled 600 metres under fire. Never hesitated. Eloise nodded. That sounds like him. There's something else, Finn said. After the war, I tried to find him. Write to him. Never could. He disappeared. He wanted to disappear. Finn smiled. Sad. Understanding. Tell him I never forgot. Tell him what he taught me about patience, about thinking differently. It saved my life 12 more times after Ortona. Tell him he was the best man I ever served with. Eloise's eyes filled. I'll tell him. But she wondered if Nathaniel had ever believed that about himself. Eloise lived another 7 years. Died in 1998 at 94. They buried her beside Nathaniel. Same cemetery, same forest view. The house sat empty while the family sorted through legal matters. 2019, April. Marcus Bridger cleaned out his grandmother's house, 28 years old. Never met his grandfather. He was in the basement, sorting through boxes. Found a tobacco tin behind paint cans, almost threw it away. Opened it. Metal, tarnished, ribbon faded, and a notebook, leather worn smooth. Marcus opened it. His grandfather's handwriting, precise, neat. December 20th, 1943. 3 kills. Germans don't check bad positions. December 21st, 1943. 9 kills. Schmidt died looking wrong place. He kept reading, through all 6 days, through all 73 kills, until the final entry, different ink, written later, much later. Total 73 men who won't go home. Can't undo it. Can't forget it. Can't be proud of it. Just hope the 30 Canadians who survived because I hunted wolves makes it worth 73 Germans who died. Hiding this medal. Not ashamed. Not proud. Just done. Marcus sat on the basement floor, reading and rereading. His grandfather, the quiet man who worked at the mine, who took his father fishing, who never talked about the war. His grandfather had killed 73 men in 6 days, and spent 46 years wondering if it was worth it. Marcus took the notebook to the Canadian War Museum. Dr. Sarah Chen was the curator. 50s, sharp eyes. She took the notebook carefully, read it. Her expression changed. This is extraordinary. Your grandfather was der Wolfjäger. We've been trying to identify him for years. What the Germans called him, the wolf hunter. Thought he was supernatural. Changed their entire tactical doctrine trying to counter him. Your grandfather's techniques are still taught in sniper schools worldwide. She looked up. This is living history. Would you donate it? Marcus thought about his grandfather. About the weight he'd carried. About the question he'd never answered. Yes. The museum created an exhibit. Innovation under fire. The wolf hunter's doctrine. Nathaniel's notebook under glass. His medal. German intelligence reports. Photographs of Ortona. The exhibit opened 6 months later. November 19th, 2019. Marcus attended. Stood in front of his grandfather's notebook. Read the final entry again. Just hope it was worth it. An older man stood beside him. 70s. German accent. The man was reading the same passage. Lips moving slightly with the words. He turned to Marcus. "Your grandfather wrote this?" Marcus nodded. The man reached into his jacket, pulled out a small leather wallet, opened it. Inside was a faded photograph. Young German soldier, and beside it a newspaper clipping. Canadian. Headline, Der Wolfjäger, the Phantom of Ortona. "My grandfather was at Ortona," the man said. "Private Klaus Fischer, 19 years old. He surrendered on December 26th. Marcus felt his breath catch. The man pointed to the notebook entry. "December 26th. He was one of the Germans your grandfather didn't kill. He came home because of Der Wolfjäger." "What do you mean?" The man's voice was quiet. "My grandfather kept this clipping his entire life. He talked about the Canadian sometimes, not with hate, with understanding. He said the wolf hunter was the most terrifying thing he'd ever faced, not because of the killing, because of the psychology, the way he got inside their heads, made them afraid to look out windows, afraid to give orders, afraid to be anywhere. But he also said something else." The man looked at Marcus directly. "He said the wolf hunter gave him a gift. The gift of fear. Fear that made him surrender instead of die. Fear that brought him home. Home to have my father, and my father to have me. I exist because your grandfather terrified mine so badly he chose life over duty." Marcus stared. I don't know what to say." The man closed the wallet carefully. "My grandfather died in 2006. He was 84. He had a good life. Wife, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. At the end, when he was dying, he said something. He said, 'Tell Der Wolfjäger thank you. Tell him the fear was a gift. Tell him he doesn't need to carry it anymore.'" He paused. "I've been looking for your grandfather for 13 years, to deliver that message, but I was too late." Marcus felt tears on his face. Didn't try to hide them. He spent his whole life wondering if it was worth it, whether saving 30 Canadians was worth killing 73 Germans. The man nodded. "My grandfather wondered the same thing, whether his survival was worth his shame at surrendering." They both carried questions they couldn't answer. They stood in silence. Two grandsons, two different stories, same weight. Finally, the man extended his hand. "My name is Klaus Fischer, named for my grandfather." Marcus shook it. "Marcus Bridger, named for no one, actually. But I wish I'd been named for him." Klaus smiled. "You carry his story now. That's a kind of naming." They looked at the exhibit together, at the photographs, the maps, the kill counts, the tactical analysis, all of it accurate, none of it complete, because it couldn't show the weight, the 46 years. The question with no answer. It couldn't show Nathaniel waking in the night, seeing faces, wondering. It couldn't show Klaus Fischer keeping a newspaper clipping for 57 years, a reminder of the fear that saved his life. The exhibit ended with a photograph. 8-year-old Nathaniel on a hilltop. Rifle across his lap. Wolf tracks below. Caption: "The lesson that changed modern warfare began here." But there should have been a second photograph. 71-year-old Nathaniel by a lake, eyes closed, finally at rest. Caption: "The lesson that took a lifetime to learn ended here. That some questions don't have answers, only the people who carried them." Marcus and Klaus exchanged contact information, promised to stay in touch. As Klaus left, he turned back. "One more thing. My grandfather left letters about the war, about Ortona, about Der Wolfjäger. I'm writing a book, not about tactics or innovation, about the human cost, the weight, the questions. Would you let me interview you about your grandfather?" Marcus looked at the notebook, at the final entry. "Just hope it was worth it." "Yes," he said. "I think he'd want that. Not the tactics, but the truth, the whole truth, including the weight." 2020. The book was published. Two Grandsons. A conversation about war memory and the weight of survival. It told two stories. Nathaniel Bridger, who killed 73 men and wondered if it was worth it. Klaus Fischer, who survived because of that fear and wondered if survival was worth the shame. The book asked the questions both men carried, didn't try to answer them, just honored them. It became required reading at West Point, at Quantico, at Fort Benning, not for the tactics, for the humanity. For the reminder that war isn't just about winning, it's about what you carry afterward. And some weights never get lighter, you just get stronger at carrying them. Or you don't. and they'd crush you. Nathaniel had carried his for 46 years, until finally beside a lake he could set it down. Klaus Fischer had carried his for 57 years, until finally with a message delivered he could let it go. 2 men, 2 questions, 2 lifetimes of wait. And finally, 76 years after Ortona, something like peace. 2021, COVID lockdown. A video appeared on YouTube, The Wolf Hunter. How a Canadian sniper changed modern warfare, 10 million views in 2 weeks. Comments section filled with arguments about tactics, about morality, about whether Nathaniel was a hero or a killer. But buried in the comments, one stood out. Username K. Fischer, 1924. Comment. My grandfather was Private Klaus Fischer, 2nd Company German Army Ortona, 1943. He surrendered to Canadian forces on December 26th because of Der Wolfjäger. He lived to be 84, had 3 children, 7 grandchildren, 4 great-grandchildren. We exist because the wolf hunter was so terrifying my grandfather chose life. War is complicated. Heroes and villains are complicated. My grandfather carried shame. The wolf hunter carried guilt. Both carried questions with no answers, but they both chose to carry it instead of forgetting. That's what I'll remember. The comment got 47,000 likes and a response. Username M. Bridger 1991. Reply, I'm the wolf hunter's grandson. Our grandfathers are both at rest now. They carried their weights to the end. We carry their stories forward. Not to glorify war, to remember its cost. Thank you for sharing this. The exchange was screenshot, shared across platforms, became part of the story. 2 grandsons, 2 different stories. Same understanding. That war creates weights that last generations. That questions without answers still deserve to be asked. That remembering is more important than judging. The video ended with footage of the Canadian War Museum, Nathaniel's notebook, the final entry. Just hope it was worth it. And then a title card. Was it worth it? 30 Canadian soldiers survived. 73 German soldiers died. 1 Canadian lieutenant died following doctrine. 2 men carried the question for the rest of their lives. You decide. But Marcus Bridger, sitting in his apartment in Toronto, had already decided. His grandfather had spent 46 years asking if it was worth it. The fact that he'd asked was what made it worth it, because the alternative was forgetting, was treating 73 deaths as statistics, was seeing efficiency instead of humanity. Nathaniel had never done that, had carried every face, every name, every question, had died wondering. And that Marcus thought was the most human thing a soldier could do, not to forget, not to justify, not to make peace with it, but to carry it, to question it, to let it hurt, because the weight was proof that the deaths mattered, that they weren't just numbers, that someone remembered. His grandfather had remembered, for 46 years, until finally beside a lake in Manitoba the weight could be set down. And Nathaniel Bridger, the wolf hunter, Der Wolfjäger, the boy who learned to hunt at 8, and the man who wondered if survival was worth it at 71, could finally rest. Marcus closed his laptop, looked at the photograph on his desk. His grandfather at 23, in uniform, before Ortona, eyes still clear. Thank you for carrying it, Marcus whispered. Thank you for not forgetting. Thank you for teaching me that some questions are more important than answers. Outside Toronto, traffic hummed. Life continued. The world moved forward. But in a museum in Ottawa, a notebook lay open under glass. Just hope it was worth it. 7 words. A lifetime of wait. A question that would never be answered, but would always, always matter, because Nathaniel Bridger had made sure of it. He'd carried it to the end, and now others would carry it forward. Not the tactics, not the innovation, not the kills, the question, the wait, the humanity. That was the real legacy of the wolf hunter, and it was worth everything.